Tivoli Storage Manager version 5 to version 6 migration, upgrading on AIX. This is a recording from an earlier webcast that covered the TSM v5 to v6 migration topic in detail. Our speaker is Rich Crespo of the IBM Advanced Technical Skills organization. If you'd like to see a replay of the entire webcast, look for the links in the comments section of this video. And now, over to Rich Crespo.
Okay, so for this demo, we're going to be doing a in-place upgrade on an AIX system. We're going to be upgrading version 557 to 634. So here's a quick summary of exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to do a same system upgrade. We're going to be using the network method versus media method. It'll upgrade 557 to 634. I'm going to be using media that I've downloaded. For the install, I'll be using media that I've downloaded versus installing off of a CD. We're going to do a full uninstall of TSM version 557. We will install TSM version 634. And during that process, we're going to go ahead and upgrade the TSM database to the new DB2 database. And we'll be doing all of this via the command line. So one of the first things we got to do for this is prepare for the upgrade. These are some steps that we're going to have to take to ensure that our system is capable to handle the upgrade, as well as give us the ability to roll back if needed. So obviously the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you're running a supported version of TSM for the upgrade. The minimum level is, I think, 534. So if you're not at that level, you need to get there before you begin the upgrade. Next thing you want to do is make sure that the system you're doing the upgrade on meets the requirements for 634. Sometimes you can be running TSM 5 on an older system, but that doesn't necessarily meet the requirements for 6.3. You're going to want to make sure that you have enough storage space on the new system to accommodate both the v5 and v6 code and database storage capacity. Because we're doing an in-place upgrade, we're going to retain the v5 database as well as build the new v6 database on the same system. So it's important that you have enough storage to accommodate all of that. One thing you want to do before proceeding is you want to make sure you disable all activity on your v5 server. This was covered actually really well under Tom's presentation, but in the reference section I have a full list of things that you're going to want to do here to make sure that the TSM v5 server is completely idle, no activity, and no risk of activity on the server during the upgrade process. It will come down early into the process, but you want to make sure that there's no activity. And for rollback purposes, if you want to have the ability to roll back, you're going to want to change some parameters on your old media. You're going to want to adjust your reuse delay to the number of days that you want to be able to roll back, as well as update the reclaim parameter to 100% to avoid your media being reclaimed. And you're going to want to do your USS conversion of the file system. You're going to run that command as well. Again, that was covered really well under Tom's presentation. And you're going to want to delete or rename your node lock file. This is the file that contains your license information. This is not going to be needed under v6. There's new license files for v6. So you're going to want to make sure that this does not get moved over. So you're going to want to delete or rename that. So the next step before doing the upgrade here, there's some things, critical components of the v5 server that we're going to need for the v6. One of the first things you're going to do is run a full backup of your v5 server before you halt it. It's going to be your last and final backup of the server. It's going to capture everything that happened up to that point. Another important step, you're going to need your device config file, so you're going to want to run a backup of your dev config and save that file. Same thing for your vol.hist file. You're going to need that as well. Those are important files for your upgrade. It's a good idea after you run the vol.hist file, take a look at it, make sure that it does have the correct DB timestamp in there so that you're sure you're using the correct database. And you're also going to want to copy over make a copy of your dsmserve.op and dsmserve.dsk files as well. Take all that, package it together, move it off into a different directory. We're going to need it all later. So first thing we're going to do for the upgrade is go ahead and install the upgrade utility. So the upgrade utility, you can get that from the FTP site. Here's the path to it. When you go to the site, you'll see several versions of the upgrade utility that you can use. Go ahead and download the one that corresponds with the version of v5 that you have installed. So once you have the upgrade utility downloaded, you're going to go ahead and install the upgrade utility. So here's a quick little demo on getting that done. It's a very simple process. You'll download the tar file. You're going to extract the tar file into a directory. In this case, I created an upgrade tools directory for that. So once you have all that extracted, you're going to go ahead and run submit. Choose the install option. Most AIX admins should be familiar with this whole process. It's very straightforward. Choose install software. Then you're going to go ahead and enter the path to where you have the software extracted. Then as for software to install, you're going to go ahead and select F4 to choose list. And then you're going to be presented with the list. You'll scroll down and you'll choose the Tivoli Storage Manager Server 6.1 Upgrade Utility. I understand we're going to 6.3.4, but that's how it's listed. That's the utility you'll choose. And then go ahead and just verify all the settings are okay here. All default settings should be fine. You don't need to change anything else here. So if everything looks good, just go ahead and press enter. Once you press enter, it's going to ask you if you're sure you want to do this. Choose enter again, and then it'll just go ahead and quickly install everything. And you'll see down here in the bottom, up on top, sorry, it says okay, everything's completed fine. So once that's completed, we're actually going to go ahead and use one of these upgrade utilities that we just installed. We're going to go ahead and prepare the database on the V5 server for upgrade. This is another simple process. So first thing you're going to do is just make sure you're in the upgrade tools directory where the file resides. I'm sorry, actually you're going to CD over to the TSM installation directory. Generally that's going to be the directory where your DSM serve.dsk file resides. In most cases it's always going to be user, Tivoli, TSM server bin, but in some cases people have a non-default install. So again, it's going to be wherever your DSM serve.dsk file is. So once you verify that that's where you're at, you're going to go ahead and run the upgrade command. Here's the syntax for the command. It's just a DSM upgrade prepare DB. In this case, I'm just redirecting the output to prepare.out. So you can reference that. I like the instructions tell you to go ahead and redirect that. I believe on Dave's demo, he just ran it in the foreground so you can see what happened. So once you go ahead and run it, then you can verify it by actually just looking at the file. So you go ahead and tail the file to look at the contents of it. And this is an extremely small database. It took just seconds to run. And it's not a long process at all, but in this case it ran really quick. And you can see here that in the middle here it says database upgrade completed successfully. I'll go ahead and highlight that so you can see what I'm talking about. And that's it. The prepare process is completed. So the next step in the upgrade process is to go ahead and uninstall your TSM v5. Because we're doing an in-place upgrade on the same system, your v5 has to go away before you can go ahead and put version 6 in there. This upgrade is actually a very simple process. For anyone who hasn't done it, there's no reason to be intimidated by this. It's just a series of scripts that you have to run. If you're running version 5.4 or 5.5, these are the scripts here that you're going to run. They're identical. And if you're running 5.3, there's a different set of scripts that you run. So here's that process for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run the first script to remove the TSM license files. That just takes a second to run. That's real time. I didn't edit that down. Then once that's complete, we're going to go ahead and run the second script. The second script is going to remove all of the TSM devices that were installed. So go ahead and enter that script and run it. And this one just takes a few seconds, about 30 seconds or so. And then once that's complete, that'll remove all the devices from the TSM devices from the system. Just another second or two, and there you go, it's complete. And then the final script is to actually remove all the TSM code, the TSM v5 code that was installed. So you go ahead and run that one, and that will remove the code. This will not remove a lot of the files that are in the TSM installation directory. Anything that gets left behind after it's installed, leave it. It's not going to harm you in any way, and in some cases you can reference those files back. For example, the DSM serve.op file, even though I had you back that up, it's still going to be left behind in the TSM directory, but it's a good idea to back that up. So that's it. At this point, TSM version 5 is completely uninstalled from the system, and then you can move on to the next step. The next step, obviously, is going to be installing TSM version 6. So again, this is a very straightforward process. It's not hard at all to install it. You can go ahead to the directory where you have the code at. In this case, I created a directory specifically for this. If you were using this off a disk, the process would be a little bit different, but in this case, I have the downloaded media. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and change permissions on the file so that I can actually extract this bin file. So I'm just going to do chmod a+x on the file. And now that I have changed permissions, I'll go ahead and run it to extract the file. There's a lot of data here, and it takes a couple of minutes to extract, but I shortened this down for the purpose of the video. And so that completes the extraction of it. So before actually installing TSM6, you want to go ahead and run the prerequisite check. This is going to tell you if your system is okay, everything's configured properly, and the system can receive TSM version 6. It doesn't take very long to run it, and when it's done, it'll tell you if everything is okay, or it will identify any problems that you need to go ahead and correct before trying to install version 6. So first you can be presented with the language. In this case, I chose English. You'll get a welcome message. Press enter to continue past that. I believe you get a little disclaimer next. There you go. Press enter again, and it'll go ahead and run the check. So in this case, everything came out okay, so we're good to proceed with the install. If there was a problem there, this is where you would see it. It would outline what the issue is. It could be a space issue, memory issue, and that's where you would go ahead and address that issue before continuing. So now that the pre-check came back and everything looks good, we're going to actually go ahead and install TSM6. So you're going to go ahead and run the install bin. Going to go ahead and unpack everything. Again, we're presented with the language option. Choose English in this case. We get our friendly welcome message. Here we're going to choose what version. I choose option 2 for TSM Extended Edition. Then we get a license agreement. You can read it if you like, or just select 1 to continue to accept the agreement. Then we're presented with the LAN-free option. Here I chose no because I'm not using LAN-free in this particular setup. So press 2 for no. Hit enter. And then we're going to choose which components we want to install. So for this install, I chose the TSM server, the license, the devices, and the storage agent. You just enter those on the line, separating them all with commas. So here this goes by pretty quickly, but what's happening here is it's telling me that it's detected the version of TSM client installed, and it's just letting me know that it's not going to touch that at all because it may not be compatible. So it's just going to move on. Then it asks if it tells me that there's a cluster. Do I want to configure it for cluster? And I say no to that as well. So this is the final summary before the install. It's just going to show you everything. If everything looks good, go ahead and press enter, and you'll start the TSM install. This is where you want to go get some coffee. This is going to take about 20 minutes to run. But when it's complete, it'll just come back and show you that little summary. Sorry about that. It'll come back and show you that everything's been installed properly, and you're good to go. So at this point, you have TSM6 installed, but still not ready for use just yet. There's still a lot more steps we have to do here. So the next big step here is to create the owner. One of the big differences in TSM6 versus TSM5 was TSM5 could just run as root. TSM6 is different in the sense that you have to create an owner for the instance, and TSM server will run as that owner. So these are the steps outlined to create that owner, as well as creating the home directory and all the database, archive log, and log directories. If you're using a wizard, it does a lot of this for you, but via command line, there's a few more steps required. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and create the group that new ID is going to be part of. Then the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and create the user itself. We're going to call it TSM Inst1. Then once the user is created, we're just going to go ahead and update the password to that user so that we can log in. So to enter a new password, verify it. So now it's done, we're going to go ahead and create the instance directory for this user. The instance directory is actually going to be where your configuration files are going to reside for this TSM instance. So for example, your dsmserve.pop file will go in that directory. Next, we're going to go ahead and create the directory for the database volumes. In this case, I'm just creating them on a single file system. But for performance reasons, whenever possible, it's better to have all these on individual disks so that you don't have I/O issues. The instructions tell you to have a minimum at least of 4 directories, so that's what I'm creating here, 4 database directories. Then I'm going to go ahead and create the log directory and the archive log directory. And that is it. So the next big step, and here's where things start to get a little more complicated, not difficult by no means, but a little more complicated. We're going to go ahead and create and format the new database for the TSM instance, as well as we're going to start the extraction process, well, the insert and extract process for the V5 to V6 conversion. So the first thing we're going to do in this step here is we're going to go ahead and verify that we've copied over all the files that we backed up in the previous step. You know, the DSM server.op file is going to be copied into the TSM instance directory. And if you don't have the absolute path to your vol.hist and dev config file, you're going to want to copy those over here as well. So once you verify that you have that here, the first thing we're going to do here is, now that we have to create the instance in DB2 using the DB2 insert command. This is creating the new TSM instance in DB2. So it's a simple command. Here's a syntax for it here. You just run the DB2 insert command, provide the proper variables and the name of the instance that you want. Just run that. That just takes a quick second to run. And that's complete. It'll tell you it's complete. And at this point, we're going to switch over to the new TSM instance ID that we created. So you'll exit the system as a root ID, and you'll go ahead and log in using the TSM instance ID. So one thing you do once you switch over to this ID, you're going to want to go ahead and look at the directory and make sure that the instance ID has proper ownership of all the files in this directory. It's going to need the ownership so that I can update the files. And you also want to make sure that the instance also owns this directory as well. So I didn't do it in this demo, but you want to look at the directory above and make sure that the instance ID is the owner of this directory. So once you verified that, the next step here is to go ahead and update the path to the new instance that we created. So we're just going to use the db update command, and this is going to update the path to the new directory. All right. Once that's done, the next thing we have to do is we have to modify the path to ensure that we're using the correct GS kit that was installed with the new TSM. So we'll do that. Let's pause that. So we do that using the export command here. We point the new library path to the correct GS kit that was installed. And continue. So once we do that, the next thing we got to do is ensure that when TSM and DB2 start up that they're using the correct path. So there's 2 files that we need to update for this. The first file is going to be the user CS_hrc file. And we're going to go ahead and set the environment in this file to the correct path. Then once that's in there, we're going to go ahead and save that file. And the second file we're going to update is the user profile. Go ahead and enter that in there. Correct path, choose the export option to make sure that it's exported correctly, and go ahead and save that as well. So the next thing we do here, prior to the load format, we have to change the DB2 code page variable to 819, so we're going to use the DB2 command to go ahead and change that. That just takes a second to run, and that's done. So once that's done, we get ready for a big part here, and this is going to be a load format. Let me pause this here. So here I'm going to go ahead and run the DSM serve load format command. I'm going to specify the DB directories. Here are the 4 directories that I created earlier. I'm going to separate those by commas. I'm going to specify the archive log size. In this case, I use 6384. I'm going to choose the active log directory. Well, I'm going to specify the active log directory and the archive log directory. Now I'm going to go ahead and run the command, the load format command. This is going to prepare all your directories for TSM version 6. It's going to format out the archive logs, the log directory, as well as those database directories. That just takes a couple of minutes to run. Not that long at all. Skip ahead here. So now that that's completed, the final two big steps here is to actually get your database over from version 5 to version 6. So when you're doing a media method, normally you would go ahead and run the extraction process first. You would specify your manifest file, and you would write out all the data to those volumes. If you watch Dave's presentation, you see it creates a lot of volumes for that. When we're doing the network method, we actually run the insert process first. This prepares the database to receive the incoming data from your V5 server. So here's a command for that. It's going to go ahead and run it. When you're doing the same system upgrade, it's actually very simple. You just specify the DSM serve, insert DB, tell it how long to wait to keep this communication channel open, to wait for the data to start. And the output of that I'm going to redirect to the insert.out file so I can monitor the status of it. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Just takes a couple of seconds, and then what I'll do here is I'll show you the output of the log file so you can see what to look for before you start the extraction process. So let's pause this here. Just go a little bit further. All right, so this is what the insert.out file will look like as it's running. And what you're looking for here is this last line of output here where it says it's ready for connection with clients. Once that is in the insert.out file, you know that you're ready to start your extraction process because the V6 server is ready to receive that data. So the next step is to go ahead and actually run the extraction. Let's pause this real quick and show you here. So we go ahead and run the db upgrade extract db command. So the difference here is for the extraction, rather than specifying a manifest file or anything like that, we're setting the high-level address, which is the loopback address of the system. So it's actually going to write internally over its internal network to itself. The low-level address is the port of the TSM instance, so it's going to write to port 1500. So that's going to send all the extracted data from the old V5 database over to the new one. And we're redirecting the output to the extract.out file. So this is the stage of the TSM server, that the TSM upgrade, that takes a long time. This is where we talk about you're going to estimate about 4 to 5 gig per hour for your upgrade process. So if you have a large database, this can take many, many hours to complete. But you can monitor the progress by looking at the two output files that you created. So you have the insert.out file that I created and the extract.out file. And what you're going to be looking for to know that it completed is the status message inside the file. When the extraction process is completed, this is the message you're going to see. If it's completed successfully, hopefully this is the message you see, that it has completed. And also on the insert process, if you look at the insert file, you'll see this message as well. And that's how you know that your extraction process has completed. So at this point, several hours into the extraction process, it's done. For the most part, the worst is behind you. Your TSM server is essentially upgraded. There's a couple more steps that you have to do before actually bringing the server up. So some of the final steps you want to do is you want to configure the database for backup. Configuring the database for backup, it's not a hard process at all. It's very straightforward, and unfortunately, with time constraints, I wasn't able to do it here. But it's outlined pretty well in the instructions on page 19 of the user migration guide, which I link in the reference section. And then after you configure your database for backup, the next thing you want to do is just take some first steps after the upgrade. And those are verifying your connectivity to your drives, your storage pool, your tape drives, and that's listed out inside the upgrade guide as well. That's starting on page 323. So after your upgrade is complete, you just run through that, make sure everything is in good order, and you're good to bring up your TSM server.
Thanks, Rich. If you'd like to see a replay of the entire webcast, including migration demos for Linux and Windows, here's a link for that replay. Thank you.